Women get to a point in life where we just don't care. We've been through the BS. We're burnout and done playing by the rules. Midlife is our time. We're fearless, confident, and ready to blow it all up for more. We are female and dangerous. I'm Jamesyn, your host and certified coach at TheBoldLife.Coach. Let's do the work. Hey, everyone. With all of the protests going on this week, I can't help but think about doing something to stand up and stand out. It's so easy to act as a bystander in the face of injustice, where others are being victimized, as it's easy to dismiss our own power. We've got a whole bunch of other things going on in our regular lives, and we don't know what to do. But doing something, saying something, becoming that someone that stands directly in her power and uses her voice does make an impact. Voices multiply and snowball into transformation. Speaking up and speaking out isn't easy to do, especially when we're up against heavy forces. It doesn't feel like our actions are moving the dial much. But every little thing we do does, in fact, create change, both internally within us and outside in the world. Women with voices have actually been considered dangerous since the beginning of time. We've been burned at the stake for F's sake. Why? Because by simply using our voices, we have the power to overturn the very power structures that have suppressed us for so long. And that makes some people very fearful. I just watched a very inspiring show on Hulu. It was about Dr. Burgess. She began her work as an RN, a nurse, investigating rape trauma in the 70s. The show is called Mastermind, Think Like a Killer. It was so crazy to me to see that in the late 70s, that there were almost zero female federal agents in the FBI. Probably similar in other law enforcement. I mean, women could barely have their own checkbook or credit card at that time. Well, Dr. Burgess was invited to consult with the FBI on the effects of rape and trauma on women because she'd written some research and books on the topic. So when she came in, men treated rape as a joke. It was like she'd walked into a lion's den. At that time, the mainstream messaging was that if a woman was raped, then the woman must have wanted it. Real nice, right? But Dr. Burgess's work with the FBI challenged and changed the common read male understanding that rape is just sex to a new understanding that sexual violence is actually about power and control, which most people believe today. With her research, she became the expert in the room. She led the FBI to develop psychological profiling techniques to find serial killers and rapists. I can't believe that psychological profiling techniques are actually that recent of a development, and no one really knows that this woman had such a hand in creating this. So Dr. Burgess went on to influence the FBI in making behavioral profiling standard across the U.S. And in the 80s and 90s, it led to states finding killers like the BTK killer and the happy face killer as well. So imagine this lady had such an impact in the field of psychology, in the field of healthcare, in the FBI and law enforcement in the U.S. Surely she must have felt like an imposter first coming in there to Quantico, where the entire group was dominated by males. She must have felt out of place. But it was her passion for the work that kept her moving day by day through the harrowing work. Later, she went on to support high-profile criminal cases as an expert witness. This time, though, she was the expert witness for the defense. She was worried that some of her work here was going to blow up in her face. She evaluated the Menendez brothers, for example, chronicling the sex abuse by their father. She wanted to find out more about their experiences and what the connection might have been between sex abuse and incest and the fact that they actually killed their father. Even though the Menendez brothers were convicted with life sentences in their parents' murders, her testimony paved the way for bringing male sexual assault to light as well. So if we think that Rape and sexual assault are taboo for women. For males, it's even worse. She also had a hand in the Bill Cosby trials about drug and rape of women starting in 2005. She supported the trial for the first victim by utilizing a detailed trauma assessment. This was a tool that brought credibility to the accuser, Andrea Constad, and actually broke open the bigger cases where Cosby was convicted of raping something like, I don't remember, it was like 50 women or something. She did worry about standing up and standing out as a witness for the defense. Her superiors at the FBI were not happy about it, right? Because she wasn't standing up for the prosecution, usually the state or the federal government, right? She did think that it might hurt her career, which is totally fair. This was well before cancel culture, but clearly things were different for women back then. The stakes were much higher. After all, society could have perceived her to be on the wrong side of the fence, but she searched her heart and she knew that she was standing by her own convictions in doing this work. She is the definition of what I call Sigma female energy. She's audacious, driven by her values and convictions. She does her own thing. She's following her passion and leading change not through being overly assertive, a bitch, or by dominating, but just by modeling excellence in her work, showing her studiousness, and driving forward, just straight building credibility through her passion and work. She really did a lot of the precursor work for the Me Too movement, which I had no idea about. If she hadn't brought awareness to law enforcement about the psychological motives for violent sex crimes and advocated on such public platforms at the time, the ability for women and men to report sex crimes today would be far less than it is. So it was so interesting to find out that her work really laid the foundation for victims to come forward, to have a voice, to be heard, and then thus begin to heal. What was so inspiring about Dr. Burgess's life is that she's such a badass advocate for women. To the observer, she's fearless. I mean, how many women would be willing to perpetually work in such a vulnerable state? 100% a man's world at the time. Everyone was skeptical of her messaging. I mean, she was working one-on-one with serial killers in prisons. To keep going through the backlash and the threat of ruin, her personal safety in jeopardy at times, is insane. But she didn't see herself as some sort of renegade either, right? She wasn't this boastful person who wanted to be in the limelight. She was simply following the path of life that was interesting to her, that she'd chosen: nursing, advocacy, and she followed the flow of opportunities to make an impact that came her way, right? The FBI reached out to her to speak, and she answered the call. She had a regular life with a husband and kids. They didn't even know what she did for work for many years. In fact, it seemed like she just fell into nursing sort of partially as a default option for the limited options that society had for women at the time. She mentioned that there were about 3 careers a woman could pick. And I've heard this before, right? Teaching, nursing, and I think the other one is something like being a secretary. And so she chose nursing. I mean, she was a very normal woman in a lot of ways, but she was smart as hell and she was audacious. I mean, how brave. In the 80s and 90s, she was deeply entrenched in catching serial killers with the FBI. At one point, she was being targeted for her work. And so she went out and got a gun for self-protection. But she kept carrying on, physically in danger. And she was dangerous. She bucked the status quo. She wasn't necessarily loud in her work. She didn't set out to do this for fame or public platform. She just wanted to serve others and shine a light on rape and trauma, which is super respectful. When she did the work and found evidence, she shared it with the world. And through her ideas, she earned male respect, which obviously and sadly was something that women had to earn with a different set of expectations at the time than men. So many women play it safe in life. We select careers or jobs to enable us to have our immediate needs met, rather than to chase an impactful dream or to stand up for causes or injustices that we see happening around us. Not only that, but we stand by when injustices, big or small, happen directly to us. We let sexually inappropriate or condescending remarks go instead of reporting them. Like, how many women regularly throughout their lives have put up with BS from men in all parts of their lives and just sort of had to deal with it? I mean, we even get paid less while working harder in the same job. We stay silent when we're disrespected. We shrink back when we're not believed or listened to. Worst of all, we internalize society's message that we're not capable of the same intelligence, roles, emotional regulation, or leadership as men. I mean, it's hilarious. Just looking in the news right now, about what's going on in politics, imagine that women are the ones who can't control their emotions. We tend to believe when others tell us that our dreams are crazy, that we can't do something, that it's impossible. So we settle for something that's more palatable to others. Some of us can say, oh no, I do what I want, but we can't help having been influenced by the society that has literally shaped us into being women and men. It's told us what the parameters are. And unless we decide to buck those rules, it's a very narrow set of parameters. I mean, when daddy doesn't think we can do it, we cave. Or when our husband doesn't want us to do something, we cave. Then we wonder why we're so disenchanted with the nature of our lives. There's little life energy in stagnation. There's little fire in living a status quo life. Instead of bringing passion into our lives, we escape. We're escape artists through overbuying, overdrinking, overeating, gossiping, complaining, making excuses. We're always looking for ways to build a fire to heat up our lives. And it is very common that we find that escape in negative things because we can't have our first choices. The beautiful thing about midlife is that women start to wake up from this mental slavery. At some point, you hear this idea of the deranged and furious midlife woman going through menopause and done with the bullshit. We get so fed up that many of us just say, fuck it, at one point. We go renegade, or either that or we go crazy. We think we're losing it. Some of us are miserable, and you can see it all over the ones that are, right? Sometimes we lash out. We've suffered long enough and realized that this is our time. Well, ladies, now is your time. If you had followed your dreams, your true passions, into a line of work, what would you be doing right now? Maybe you don't want to do anything. That's respectable too. I mean, being a housewife is a great choice if that's what you want to do with your life. But if you're lucky, you can say that you're doing exactly what you want to be doing. You're aligned between your soul's mission and your daily life. But the majority of people are not in that boat. Or even if they once felt aligned with their soul calling and were climbing towards success in that area, they're now disillusioned. Maybe there was a sudden shift inside calling for you to do more. Make a pivot. Make a big change. Get out. Get loud. Be somebody new. It's good to reflect on the path in order to understand who you were that led you to the place you are now. There's that saying that says, what got you there won't get you to the next place. What do you see when you look back at the younger version of yourself constructing your adult life plans? Well, when I look back, I see someone who is struggling between the desire to build a creative life and a practical existence. I wanted to be a psychic medium, a singer, a psychiatrist. But each of these dreams was knocked down by either someone else or myself at some point. I couldn't possibly make it happen. I couldn't possibly take the college workload to be a psychiatrist. I'd be downright crazy to think I was going to be a psychic medium. My mom definitely thought so anyway. Maybe it wasn't just that I shot down each of these desires individually, but it's about the fact that I dumbed down my creative spirit, the possibilities for my life before I even gave myself a chance. I relegated my life options to the B list before even looking at the A list. Because of that, I've spent many years searching for the real me, being unclear in what I really desire for myself because I felt so conditioned so long ago to suppress my desires. I still struggle with this from time to time. It's not easy to be honest with yourself about what it is that you truly want for your life when it looks a lot different than your life today. We want to talk ourselves into the fact that, oh, we're fine. We're okay. It's got to be this way. But before we can make an external change, we have to get really honest about the state of our lives with ourselves. We have to admit what is not working, what is making us unhappy, what we don't like, what we don't want to be doing, and what we wouldn't choose if we didn't feel that we had to. The strategy that's worked for me is simple, but it's not a one-time task. It takes work to uncover the lies that we tell ourselves in our minds. First, you write an exhaustive list of what you want your life to look like. So the big dreams, the small details, anything that comes up in between. When I've done this in the past, I noticed that I was fibbing to myself. My list would say really constrained, practical things like get promoted, go on 2 vacations a year. Sure, I mean, those are things I would want to do if I have to live within the constraints of my current life, my current vacation schedule, and, my current time off. But if I could do anything in the world with my life, are you telling me that that is my biggest dream? No effing way. That's not what I'm looking for. Challenge yourself to think bigger. Like, consider no holds barred. If your life could look any way you wanted it to look, what then? I want you to go big, go bold. Make a master exhaustive list. Find your inner audacity here. Eventually, you'll get to some realizations about your life, but don't fool yourself. It may even help to force yourself to list options only other than those that fit into your current life. So go outside of what's mini possible in your mini current life, and then write a list of things that you want to get rid of too, or quit having in your life. For me, this part is much easier. I can easily identify things that I'm sick of, right? Because the negative thoughts in my mind will get to me from time to time and be like, oh, I hate this, or I hate that. And by listing those, we can get better clues into areas that we want to improve or change. It's almost like starting from the flip side, right? What do you want to get rid of first? And then if you could go as big as possible in your wildest dreams, what would your life be like? So when you're done, then star the highest priority items. Those give you some indications as what might be the most important thing to you to change, to find, to be, to become in your future life. What does it actually take to make a bold midlife pivot towards a new beginning? Well, we're led to believe that it's too hard, that there are always the excuses of time and money. We don't have enough time. We wouldn't be able to keep up with our lifestyles. We need to save for retirement. We need to stay afloat. But what's the price of staying in a life without passion? Many of you who are out there in the pits of darkness or despair due to the state of your life know what I'm talking about here. In order to make a life pivot toward ourselves, we have to admit that the identity that we formed through our previous experiences may have been somewhat of a fraud, or maybe it's just not relevant anymore. If we're no longer that person, then who are we? It's like jumping off a cliff into the unknown, alone, coming to a realization that we want not only independence as an adult, but personal autonomy sometimes, freedom, from what we've been taught that should make us happy. And that is super scary. Before making a huge jump from an ending to a new beginning, we have to get comfortable with those confusing feelings, the mixed emotions, the fear of change, the restlessness. We have to sort of sit in this valley of the unknown as part of an uncomfortable process that is transformation. Transformation's messy. And it's only through acceptance of these feelings, all of the confusion, the feeling lost, can we work towards moving on from them, to make change, to begin anew, to rebirth with our new identity. Lest we move too quickly or scare back to the comfort of our standard lives. People do this all the time. When people talk about reinvention or finding success or making a pivotal life change, they don't usually emphasize the hard part. This period of coming to the realization that you can't, you won't, you don't know if you can continue on living the way that you're currently living. This part of it's usually a mess. We do see it depicted sometimes in movies. It's always the same way. Somebody experiences something bad like death, a divorce, a breakup, getting fired, and they're the victim. And they're being shown, lying on the couch, totally depressed for days. They don't change their clothes. It's dark in there. They're surrounded by pizza boxes. You know what I'm saying? What about the stories where women choose change, despite the resistance that she feels from society or family, despite the guilt she feels in prioritizing her own needs? It's still hard, and a person making a new beginning still has to go through a difficult time, wrestling with the confusion, the doubt, complications, imposter syndrome. As the life of Dr. Ann Burgess shows us, big changes can happen one step at a time. Her work started with a simple decision to become a nurse and do research. And over time, it snowballed into the advancement of women's rights in the United States and the world, probably. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. There's lots to think about here. If you want some help snowballing your own career, big life change, to build a life of passion, reach out to me at TheBoldLife.Coach. I'm happy to help. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If so, give me a follow and a quick review. You can always reach me at TheBoldLife.Coach. See you back here next week at Female and Dangerous.